that'll be fine. But if not, you need to take it. Our license are renewed in 2024. So you've got to take 3 hours of Code of Ethics anyway. So just make sure fair housing is one of your electives so that we won't have to have a mandatory class again. All right, if y'all will open up your books or your notebooks, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you would, try to take notes if you've got to ask a question, and let's do questions at the end so that we can keep on track with everything. And because we're actually recording it and it's hard for them to be able to hear, questions that are asked. So, all right. So first we're going to discover required by Alabama Real Estate Commission. Number 1, your real estate brokerage service disclosure. Every seller and every buyer have to sign this. If they refuse to sign it, then you still have to sign it and date it. And then you're going to put on there refuse to sign. If it's a seller, because we have the listing, then Cindy pretty much remembers to put it in the notebook. But we have no clue who your buyers are and when you're working with buyers. So it's very important that you put a copy of that in that notebook. And if you can't, email it to Cindy or something, or text her or email her and say, hey, get it out of my dot loop. And so that she can put it in that notebook. The other things that are required by law, agency agreements, transaction brokerage, buyer agency, single agency, and limited dual agency. We're going to go over some of that. You have to have a listing agreement. Your listing agreement is not valid unless it is signed and initialed in all the appropriate places. Every extension or price change has to be in writing by the seller. They have got to send you an email or a text, and then you can email that text to yourself. We have got to have that in a folder for 2 reasons. 1, it's required by law, which is the most important reason. And 2, our board office audits us to see that we are not just automatically extending things, because again, that is against the law. So make sure you have that in writing. However, on your listing agreement, if somebody says they don't want it in MLS, then make sure you put in there and have them initial again that they don't want it in MLS, or if they don't want to sign. Because we use the same agreement for residential, land, and commercial. And there's some commercial people that don't want a sign. And then I've got one right now, and Al does too, that doesn't want in the MLS or a sign. So we had to make sure to get that in writing. Number 4, sign and initial all the contracts. Make sure that they sign every change as well. They've got to sign the agency disclosure, the lead-based paint, hold harmless, contract acceptance, the TILA, and the bottom of each page, and then of course sign it at the end. A couple of times people will forget to actually initial something. That can actually get somebody out of a contract if you forget something. So make sure you do that too. Signed estimated closing statements. We're going to talk about that again later, but it has to be the original offer, each counter, and the final. That is a law. Signed closing disclosures, because that's what they we used to call them HUD 1s. Now they're called closing disclosures. So they have to be signed by all parties. The policy we have at the office is you turn it in when you come into the office with your check. You give us the deed, the termite letter, survey if you have one, because that's not always going to be something that you have. Of course, we want your check. I mean, if you want to get paid, we got to have the check. And your as is. Now, you do not have to have an as is for new construction or for land, but every single thing else you do. And guys, it does not matter who you're working with, the buyer or the seller. Make sure you take one to closing to get done. It's a whole lot easier if you take it with you to that final walkthrough, which I'm going to talk about that again as well. So all of those documents plus documents required by the law must be given to the office. All right. A lot of your pages are front and back, by the way. So again, on estimated closing statements, the purchaser has to have one. You cannot use something that the bank gives you. Now, if you get something from the bank that has what they are supposed to have or what they're supposed to bring to closing, you can use that to do your estimated closing statement. However, you have got to do one. It has got to be signed the day that they do the offer. It does not need to be signed a week later or 2 weeks later. If you send it on dot loop and it's later than that date, then we're still going to get in trouble. They literally look at that.
I'm sorry, do you have another folder? Hers didn't have this stuff in it.
Oh,
Is there another one?
yeah. Yeah, here you go. Well, I don't know what's in that one
I
now.
don't know. I had a note and all kind of stuff in it.
Oh, that's probably my personal folder. But make sure you get all of these things in writing and make sure the final sales price is on there. On the seller, it is not a law that the seller has to have one at the listing. I know a lot of you like to do it at the listing appointment. Really, the only time I would recommend doing that is one, if they ask for it. Two, if it is a first-time seller. We always talk about first-time home buyers. Nobody ever talks about first-time home sellers. They have no clue because they've not done that before. So you might need to help them out a little bit with one at the listing on that one. Binders, I'm not going to read this, but we are going to, these are our office policies on binders. Please make sure you get one. Now, here's something that is not on here that is absolutely crucial to what I'm about to tell you, that is a new office policy. So right now that we're taking earnest money back, listen, y'all will come in there and just throw it on my desk. Sometimes, or maybe Cindy and them are throwing it on my desk. It doesn't have in the what the address is. And I certainly don't know who the realtor is. I mean, I have to go do all this research to do that. So we're going to go back to the way we did it before, not only because I think it's a good idea, but because it's something the Real Estate Commission sent to brokers. What they sent out is if your office is taking earnest money deposits, then you better make sure that you have what we call an escrow drawer. Okay? An escrow drawer, which we're supposed to be required to do anyway. We have active listings and an escrow drawer. In that escrow drawer, it has to have these things we just talked about. Your brokerage disclosure, your agency, your signed contracts, your estimated closing statements. So from now on, you will turn that in with your earnest money. It needs to be attached with that. That way there's no question to that, and we go ahead and put it in the escrow drawer. Now, why is that such a big deal? One, it tells me who everybody is. Two, because the Real Estate Commission has the right, if they come audit us, to sit down at my computer and go into my dot loop. I don't think there's any of y'all out here that would like for the Real Estate Commission to go in your dot loop, because sometimes you may have some things that are not signed, and that's going to be on you. And then it's going to affect the office, and then it could affect other things down the road. So make sure that y'all start doing that. And if you don't have the earnest money, I'm still going to start requiring you guys turn it in ahead of time. There's not going to be any more of this checking your folders the week of closing, the day of closing, day before closing. This all needs to be done as soon as it goes under contract. So I wanted to make sure everybody understands that. And you also need to tell, if your people have got to transfer any money, make sure you tell them to go ahead and do it, because, we got to get that in there within 48 hours. 72 at the absolute most as when I have to take that to the bank. When I do take it to the bank, I'm making you a copy of the deposit slip and the check, okay? And I'm putting it in your box, or if you want me to scan it into you, I will. When I get back, I give you where the receipt was. So if the mortgage company is involved and they're asking you for those items, then you'll have it, and it'll be easier for you. All right, let's go to the broker's disclosure. You've got to make sure that you sign it. You've got to make sure that your consumer signs it. And again, it's got to be in the book, and you've got to make sure you give them a copy. Let me stop right there and say this about dot loop. It is crucial when you're using dot loop or DocuSign or whatever you use, because we do have one person here that uses DocuSign instead of a dot loop, but you have got to send a PDF. Y'all have got to check that box that says PDF. You know why? Because legally, Alabama law says you've got to give everybody a copy. Everybody's got to have a copy. Well, if you don't attach that PDF, they don't have a copy. All they're doing is sign it online. So make sure you hit that. All right, limited consensual. This is mandatory that it be done the day you do your listing. So make sure that if you are sending it through dot loop, that you are sending them the limited consensual. And And it really, if you're doing this in person, in my opinion, it's so much easier to have this form right after your brokerage disclosure, which is why we put it in the listing packets like that, because this way you've already got that conversation of commission. You've already talked about it. You've already got it settled of what the commission's going to be. We're definitely going to be talking about commission today. And then the buyer will sign it. So one problem that we're having through dot loop is the agent will get this at the listing. It'll be in their dot loop. It's in the folder at the office, but then one of you guys will sell it, and then you're getting your own limited consensual signed. It's got to be on the same sheet. So if you're selling somebody else's listing in the office, you've got to text them, email them, or go in the office and just scan it into yourself and do it. Please don't use their originals, but just scan it into yourself. Call me, call Cindy, call Wes. Any of us will be happy to scan it in to you. So that's not a problem, but it's got to be on the same form. And make sure y'all witness it as well. All right. So, limited consensual, I will tell you that is one thing that they are trying to change as far as the real estate commission is concerned. They're hoping to, or they're going to, and hopefully it'll pass. I'm all for this, by the way. Where instead of having limited consensual, it'll be called designated agent. When that does happen, I think everybody in here will like it better, because what that'll mean is if you're working for the seller, then you're going to have a form that the seller signs at the listing that you're their agent. You're their designated agent. Then if somebody else is working with a buyer, they're going to be their designated agent instead of this limited consensual dual agency. And one of the reasons that I am all for that is because as a broker of the office over the last probably 5 or 6 years, people that are coming from other states and actually read this form, they see that there could be a conflict, especially if you have the listing. Don't let that scare you, because there's been several times that the listing agent has called me and said, hey, they're coming here from California or wherever. And I showed them the house. They love it. They want to make an offer, but they won't let me write it because I'm the listing agent and they feel like I've already got a fiduciary relationship with the seller, which is true. That is very true. Don't worry about that. Just call me. I'll write the offer for you, or you can call one of your other realtors in the office. Let them write it for you. They can start that negotiation. Once it is under contract, you take back over. It's not like somebody's, taking that buyer from you. They're just helping you out by writing the contract and doing a little bit of negotiation. So, all right. Transaction broker. That's hard for a lot of people in the office. Transaction broker means you are assisting someone. You cannot give them any advice. There's several offices in Dothan and several states. Florida, for example. If you get your Florida license, like Chris and Brandon have theirs, they do transaction brokerage. You don't represent anybody. You're not giving anybody any advice. You supply information to them and you assist them in writing the offer. You still market everything, just like the list says on here. You can market, you can give them CMAs, you can do all that, but you can't cross that line of giving advice. And there's several people in this office that when it comes to a buyer, they want to be able to give them all the advice they can. Be careful with that, guys, because unless you've gotten a buyer's agency signed up front, if they ask you, well, what do you think that this house is worth? What do you think that we ought to offer? You cannot answer that. You cannot answer anything like that because you do not have a buyer's agency yet. You are a transaction broker. However, then you can say, well, I'm glad you brought that up, because if you choose for me to be a buyer's agent, then I can help you with these things and I can answer these questions. But right now, I'm actually a transaction broker. I can still sell you the house. I can still write the offer. I can negotiate on your behalf, but I cannot give you any advice. So make sure you understand that. Same thing with a seller. If they say, should I take this price? Do you think that my house, I could get more? Be very careful if you didn't get something signed. Buyer's agency. Make sure when you're doing your buyer's agency that in that blank where it's got those lines, you've got to put something there. That cannot be blank. The Real Estate Commission is not a fan of that. You've got to put something like, 100,000 to 300,000, whatever. That's a huge range right there, but something, 4 bedrooms on the west side of town. You've got to make sure you put something in there. One thing you need to do that is happening all over the place. You see where I've got underlined and in that box, I've got open houses for sell by owners and other situations. Write that out. See, I'll put up there, this includes builders, foreclosures, auctions, open houses, and FSBOs. A lot of you work with FSBOs. Make sure you put that in there. Make sure you put builder. Now, not many of you do auctions, but you've been working with somebody for 3 months and they go to somebody else's open house and then they tell them they want to write an offer. I hate to say this, but a lot of people, we got a lot of realtors out there. Some of them are not being trained and they're darn sure not having this class like they're supposed to once a year that the Real Estate Commission requires. So, they're just saying, are you working with another realtor? Sometimes they don't even ask that. Make sure you always ask that. Do you have an agent? And if they do, then they need to call that agent. Or you could be polite and say, well, I'll write the offer for them, but I cannot assist you. I cannot give you advice. I'll just write it up how you want me to, and then I'll get it to your agent. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not trying to take their buyer. But there are people out there right now that'll have an open house. Your buyer will go to it. They'll write that offer, and then they're like, sorry, I showed it to them. I was the procuring cause. So therefore, this commission is mine. That's a little here or there, Yeah, they showed them the house, but you've been showing them for a long time. And there's a lot going down in the pipeline with NAR and a lawsuit that we're going to talk a little bit about at the end, that this form right here is going to have to be different. So if y'all would take that form and put it to the side, so when I start talking about that here in a little bit, we can go over it more in depth. So just kind of set it aside. All right, the next thing you should have is your listing agreement in here. Make sure you pull up tax records. Tax records need to be in all your folders. The tax records, whether you're working with a buyer or the seller, need to be in your dotloop. Why? Because if the EPA comes to your office, and this happened to Realty South, and I've told y'all this for several years now, they started out with this huge fine because they didn't have tax records, and they literally could not prove to the EPA that something was not lead-based paint. And they said, oh, well, what were we supposed to do? Well, then somebody else said, well, if you'd have pulled the tax records up and shown the age, then you wouldn't be in this situation. So they went back and started doing that. That fine went from here to way down because they were able to pull up all those tax records, or some of them were brand new construction and didn't even have that yet. So that's why you need to make sure you have tax records. Plus, it'll tell you which county it's in. It'll tell you, because there's a lot of things we have that may say Dothan, but yet it's Dale County, or Dothan and it's Geneva County. So that's another reason why you need it. Listing agreements need to be residential. Please try to get them for 6 months. The market is changing. I know everybody thinks, oh, well, goodness gracious, I can sell a house before 6 months. Well, you never know. You never know. So always make sure it's 6 months. If it's land or commercial, then we prefer you to get a year. The sales price, y'all know how to do all that. 2.2 is very important that y'all understand. And no, I'm not going to go over this whole agreement. However, 2.2 is something y'all need to understand. All over the nation, if you own your house outright and do not have a mortgage on it, you're not required to have insurance on it. Guys, let me tell you something. That's not smart to begin with. Ask some people in Mexico Beach after that hurricane hit, and they lost everything. They'll tell you that. But I've run into 2 people in Dothan, by talking about this that they said, oh gosh, my parents don't have insurance on their home. It's paid for. And I'm like, but why would you not have insurance on it? What if something happened? Hurricanes still affect us here in Dothan. Y'all know that. We have tornadoes. But even just a bad storm, it's just smart to do. But let me tell you something. They're putting their house up on the market, and something happens to an agent or a buyer at that house, then they're going to go after that seller, and that seller doesn't have insurance. So they need to get it. And if they say, well, I don't want to get it, tell them they've got to. Because if they don't, technically you have to disclose that publicly, not in private remarks, publicly, that does not have insurance on the property, and everybody showing it has to enter at their own risk. You've got to put that. And if they do get it, they can pay for it by the month. They can pay for it, different insurance companies work different ways. By the month, every 6 months, every 12 months. Once it closes, they'll be reimbursed. Now, I'll tell you, for a seller, that does take 2 to 4 months to get that back, but they will get it back. If they're not going to allow you to put it in MLS, make sure you put does not. If they don't want a lockbox on it, make sure you put does not. Going over to commission, make sure on 4.2 on that next page that you put that commission again, and you need to put, don't put less than 30 days in that other part. It'd be better to put 60 days. Now, if they take it off the market and then list it with somebody else, there's nothing you can do about it. But we're about to enter that time of year where a lot of people don't want their house on the market during the holidays because they have family and, they have all these decorations and they just don't want the hassle. So, but yet they're still willing for it to be shown. Make sure you have that something in there. All right. Go over to, so number 8, we've got to change because that still says the attorney will be holding that. That's no longer true because we hold it. Make sure you get everything on that back page signed because it is important. They also need to, let's see what. On property defects, make sure you ask them if they have anything. I mean, if the dishwasher doesn't work, then you need to be able to put it as is. That's come up a couple of times lately. All right, the next pages that we want y'all to have, your listing is no longer valid without these pages signed. We need to know if this is one way of you getting around that insurance question on number 1, because it asks, who do they have insurance with? Because if somebody's coming here from another town, or if you're doing an assumable loan, they may want to stay with that same mortgage company, same insurance company, so you need to know, who it is. It also asks them, how many hours they need, how many days they'll need for it to be shown. Please remember, if it is tenant occupied, it is a 48-hour written notice. So, and your tenant also has to sign that listing agreement on that one part. They don't have to see the rest. They just need to sign that one part. This is also a way to find out if they got a termite bond. Is there a homeowners association? Big on that right now. Make sure you know if it's a homeowners association. Make sure you know if it's monthly, if it's yearly, what does it cover, and then who we need to contact to make sure that they are paid up, because it can delay your closing or stop it cold if somebody is not paid their HOA fees. Find out if they got a survey, if they've done repairs, if they can't remember 10 years back, at least the past 5 years. Utilities, this is a big one because you may have City of Dothan for trash and water, but you got Wiregrass Electric for electricity and Southeast Gas for gas. So, a lot of people will say, well, I have Dothan for everything. No, they don't. Because the other party in the house probably pays those bills, and they're just assuming they have all Dothan when they don't. You might want to ask to see some of those bills and make sure, but definitely put that on there. Who's their mortgage with, and are they currently behind? Now, if they initial right there and say that they're not behind, and you find out later that they are, at least you did your homework and they lied. You had no party to that. If they are behind, then it's a good opportunity to try to help them with a short sale. And then this talks about power of attorney. All right. The next thing that you should have is buyer's acknowledgement statement. I would get this signed as soon as you get the disclosure signed and as soon as you get your agency to signed, because this tells people what they need. It's important that they get a home inspection. And you see on there it says very strongly recommended. A home warranty, strongly recommended. Property inspection, it goes ahead and starts talking about the as is, in working order. Again, if you got that dishwasher situation, make sure you disclose in public remarks or private remarks somewhere that it is, the dishwasher is as is. Or if they've got one of those intercom systems from the 60s and 70s and they don't know if it works, just put as is. Final walkthrough. I want to talk about final walkthrough. Do not wait to the day of closing. I don't even like it when y'all wait to the day before, because guess what? You're in breach of your own contract, because our contracts, which we're going to get to here in a minute, actually state that you're supposed to do a walkthrough before that. If you wait to the last minute or do it the day before, you're liable to have a problem. If there is a problem, then closing could fall apart. That's worst case scenario. Or you may have to escrow money with the attorney for something to be done after closing, which is common. That happened the other day. Somebody came to me and said, well, we've got a problem. We did our walkthrough and, not everything's out of the house and the people don't live here anymore, but they got somebody coming to get it. But the backyard, it's got stuff all in it. It's got stuff in it. I said, how much you think it'd cost to clean it up? And they said, I don't know. We think about $100. Okay, well, let's just do that. $100? I mean, out of, getting a commission, that's not much to pay. But then a brand new roof was put on this house. Well, when the inspector came back to re-inspect the house and got up on the roof, there was some things missing around the boot area. There were some nail pops and one other minor thing. Well, the roofer's out of Birmingham. So we were like, well, what do we do? And I said, don't freak out. Escrow some money. Just put about $1,000 in escrow and put a date on it. Now, you're not supposed to go past 30 days on anything that is in escrow with the attorney. Those repairs have to be done before that. If it involves certain products, and those of you that are new construction know this, if it's a window situation or windows, it may take longer than 30 days. You might want to put 60 because it is taking a long time for windows to come in. If it's a glass pane, that may be okay, but a window's a different story. But really and truly, they don't like to, especially closing attorneys, like to escrow anything. So what happens to that? If you have money that is escrowed and the seller can't get that last $1,000 or whatever it be, if that repair isn't done, that money gets to go to the buyer to get that repair done. So that's how you solve problems with something like that. Professional vendors, that is just saying that you've got to have somebody, I don't care if it's the home inspection, it doesn't matter what it is that you're dealing with, they need to be somebody that's professional. They need to be licensed and bonded and not Uncle Tom just coming in there or Buddy or Bubba or Aunt Susie, she taught home ec, but she knows houses. I mean, we just can't do that. It's got to be somebody that's professional. Mold. If there's mold in the house, there are certain home inspectors that can actually do that for you. Megan's Law, do not look that up. Do not look that up. That is up to them as the buyer or seller or whatever to look that up. Not you. You do not know the situation. It could have been a young man that had been dating this girl for years and they had some physical relations, and then the parents found out about it and got it mad and ruined the boy's life. Or it could have been the opposite and something really bad. But you don't know because they're listed the same way, which is a problem. But do not look that up. Then, of course, in our office, you're required to have a wood infestation report. I do not care if it's commercial. I do not care if it's a mobile home. Get one. We have one, and some of you have heard this story before. We had a commercial property, and the buyer was a closing attorney, a real estate closing attorney. And he does other things too. But he was buying that from our agent, and he said, well, the seller doesn't want to provide a wood infestation report, and I'm not going to get one. And I said, that's fine. I said, but I'm going to make you sign something. You're going to have to do a hold harmless. He said, that's fine. He said, Gina, it is a concrete block building in downtown Headland. Nothing is going to happen to that. Well, guess what? A little bit later, what happened? He called me and he goes, oh my God, we should have done that wood infestation report. And I said, got termites, don't you? He said, yep, they went right up that concrete block wall, went into there and started eating the trusses. So it doesn't matter. And a lot of people think that, maybe termites don't get on a mobile home. But they've got wood in them. They'll get anywhere. So be careful with that. But wood infestation report is not only for termites. It's for wood-boring beetles. It's also for to see if there's needs a moisture barrier up under the house. Rotten wood. There's just a lot of things that can be for. A survey. Make sure you guys ask somebody if they want a survey. All because it's a lot and block in a town doesn't mean it doesn't need a survey. So pay attention when you go out there and you're showing these houses. If they've put up a fence or built a pool or done anything, make sure I would get a survey. I would get a survey with those things on it, because there are several times that we have found out that the corner of a fence or a corner of a storage building or the entire fence was actually on somebody else's property. Well, then you can't get clear title to it, and it's a mess. So it's better to work it out now, because let me tell you what's going to happen. If you don't work that out now, then when you get down the road, and we've got two going on just like this right now, that people trying to sell their house and nobody recommended they get a survey, and here they are stuck in a situation. And they've got to go get things. They've got to go to the county. They've got to get an attorney involved. They've got to go door to door and talk to the neighbors. It's just not a wise thing to do. So if they've got an existing survey, great. But if they don't have one, then I highly recommend it. And I definitely do with acreage. The appraisers on square footage are having a fit because we don't measure. I wouldn't trust my measurements for anything. Now, Wes went out there with me. He went to Auburn for this kind of thing. He taught drafting at Dothan Technology. Yeah, I trust his, but I certainly wouldn't trust mine. And a lot of us get them from the tax records. Well, they're getting a little upset about that. Of course, they always say, "Hey, call us. We'll go measure it for you." But guess what? They're not doing it free, and some of them want $100 to $250. Well, now why am I going to do that? I mean, that's kind of expensive. So just find out maybe if they have some old house plans or an appraisal, because we've experienced this too. You can have 4 appraisals, and that doesn't mean any of them are going to have the same square footage. I'm just telling you. Everybody measures things differently. Now, they may not be far off from each other, but find out if they've got an old appraisal. Varmint infestation, that always tickles me a little bit, but it is a real thing. We've had bats, we've had alligators in ponds, we've had all kind of things. So just be careful with all that. I'm not going to go over the rest of that because some of that I'm going to hit on in a little bit. So we'll skip over that and go right to the real estate sales contract. Do not leave blanks in this. Do not leave blanks in this. You've got to put, however, the buyers are on there. If you put down 2 people, or whatever they are, husband and wife, partners, daughter and mother, whatever. If you put down 2 people on here and then find out one of them doesn't need to be on it, you can always you don't have to redo the contract. You can redo the front page. Or you can just do an addendum to it and have everybody sign it. Same thing with a seller. I notice a lot of you are leaving the seller blank. That truly doesn't look like you're doing your job. You've got the MLS in front of you and you've got the tax records. At least put their last name. So make sure you're doing that. The address, if it's a lot and block, go on and put it in there. If it's not, look up the plat deed book and the page number. That just makes you look like you're more professional. Make sure you put the right people under agency disclosure. Make sure you put something in earnest money. You're going to see some people that don't have anything in earnest money anymore, because it is getting to be such a hassle. Now, one thing we've talked a lot about earnest money, but one thing I've not talked about, because I wanted to wait till we got to this point. So let's say you put $1,000 in earnest money, but you don't have it in your hand when you're writing that offer. Well, then technically you can't put it just as $1,000. You have to put something, type in something under there, go to another part of even if you go to another part of the contract, special stipulations or something that says when you're going to be getting that earnest money. Because if you don't have it in your hand right then it needs to say somewhere in there, upon acceptance or after a satisfactory home inspection by the buyer. And you're going to see more of that second one because people are not satisfied with their home inspections and then they're having a hard time getting their earnest money back. So I think you're going to see more and more of that, by the way. Pet peeve of mine. If your buyer is cash, then you do 1A only. If your buyer is getting a loan, you do 1B only. Do not do anything under A. This seems to be a problem, and there's 2 companies in Dothan that apparently have not been taught that because I see it on my desk all the time, and it is a pet peeve. Y'all do not do that. Again, 1A, cash. 1B, mortgages. Do not do both. There's just no way. Financing and closing costs, make sure you put who's paying it, and if it's the seller, how much they're paying up to. Then you go up under D and make sure you put what the total amount is that seller is going to be paying. If the buyer is going to be paying it, you don't necessarily have to do that because it says seller. But try to put something. Closing and possession date, make sure you put that. Who's the closing attorney is, make sure you put that. Again, just don't leave blanks. Let's see. Go to page 3, item number 10. They're either accepting it as is right then, or they're going to be doing an inspection. Now, some of these cash people, because they're trying to win things, because there's multiple offers, are saying that they want it as is, but yet they're still wanting a home inspection. So do not mark both. If they're doing a home inspection, you only mark B. If they are taking it as is, then you send them an as-is addendum immediately. You don't wait. You send it immediately because they just agreed to take it that way. And if you are working with an agent that marks both, you send them that as-is agreement, and I guarantee you they'll backtrack. Sewer and septic systems, y'all be careful with that. When you're working with a buyer, make sure that you know for sure if that is a sewer or septic system. We've had 2 agents, it was 1, but now it's 2, that the listing agent assumed, we all know what that means, but the listing agent assumed that it was hooked up to city water because it was, these places weren't, one was residential, one's been commercial. But because they're in Dothan, they just assumed that they were city of Dothan, water and sewer. Buyers bought, buyers was trying to do things, buyer had a plumbing problem on the residential one. Come to find out, they called the office and they said, you told us it was city water, it is septic tank. And the agent had to pay, thank God, city of Dothan was at the road, but they still had to pay well over $1,000, well, it's probably closer to 2, to hook up from the house to the street. And that's all on the agent. That's not going to be on the agent and the office because we didn't make that mistake. So pay attention to that. The other one was a commercial one, and apparently where the septic tank was, they're out walking and they're doing some things and step down and, oh, well, I'll be darned, this is a septic tank. And that's all I'm going to say about that one. But anyway, that was interesting. The next page, on page 5, where it's a wood infestation report, all because you put $80 or $100 there does not mean that if it does have a problem, that it can't be negotiated at that time. A lot of people panic and go, well, I only put $80 there. What do I do? There's a problem. It had wood-boring beetles. So what you'll do is you'll actually, renegotiate, and the seller needs to pay for that. But, a lot of your sellers are going to say, well, I don't want to pay for anything ever. I'm not paying closing costs. I don't want to pay for this. I don't want to pay for that. But they're never going to be able to sell it if they've got active termites. Now, they might if they've got just some rotten wood or something like that a buyer's willing to take on. But they need to know that they've got to do something about termites. Lead-based paint, we're going to get in that in a little bit. We've talked about a lot of this other. Go to page 6, item number 12, final walkthrough. It says 48 hours. So those of you that wait till the day before or the day of, you are actually in violation of what you and your buyer signed. You are in violation of it. Now, a lot of people will say, but they're not from here. They're flying down or they're driving down and they're not going to be here till the day before closing or the day of closing. Well, you might better change that. They signed something stating they would do that walkthrough 48 hours ahead of time. If I were the seller and they did it the day of closing, tough stuff. You sign stating something, you do it 48 hours ahead of time.
Yeah, it says within.
I understand that, but I just think that if they're getting here, I'd get here early. I'm just telling y'all that if there's a problem, you're in a bind. I don't think you should do it before 48 hours necessarily, but I just think you need to, don't do it the day of. The day of is what is the problem. Day before, if they're out of town, that's fine. If they live in Dothan, then I would do it 48 hours ahead of time. I really would. And I know what within means, but it's just y'all would not believe, because y'all don't hear it. I do. The problems that y'all have on walkthroughs when y'all wait till the last minute. Condition of property. That's a big deal. It talks about things. Make sure everybody reads that. Property assessments, again, that refers to homeowners association. Number 16 on page 7 talks about risk of loss. If you've got a seller that doesn't want to get that insurance, here again, you can say it's in our contract. It says that the seller agrees to keep their hazard insurance on their property. So if they don't have it on there, you'll have to mark that paragraph out. Improvement and appurtenances. Guys, make sure your sellers read that. That has been an issue we've had all along, where people just take things. If it is a permanent fixture or bolted in, like let's talk about TVs. This happened last week. They said, well, we want that seller to get that TV down and all those brackets. No, we can't. You bought the house, but we're not taking it down. We're leaving all of it. In fact, the TV was left, because we can't take anything down that is bolted. It becomes part of the property. We've also had somebody that loved their storm door. Well, so did the buyers, but the sellers took it, and then they had to bring it back. There's been one, it was not our office, but the people went in there and took every light fixture, every mirror, the hearth of the fireplace, the gate that went to the private patio. They took all that, and they said, well, I never agreed to leave that. Well, yeah, you did. It said in there that you'd leave all that. Access to property. Now, I will tell y'all, number 18 cracks me up, because people broom clean condition and free of debris and recent grass cut. That apparently means something different to some of the folks. If there's any items that they do not want to remain and want excluded, I would have them go ahead and take those away from the property. If there's a chandelier they love, I would go ahead and have it taken down, packed up, and put something new there, and you won't run into these problems. But we had a seller one time. We're getting pretty close to closing, and it fell through. It was over $500,000 house, and the listing agent said to the agent, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Apparently, the daddy built the pergola out by the pool, and they want to take it with them. What? Okay. So I go with that agent to that house, and so the daddy shouldn't have built it by the pool. So you have a pool. You've got the concrete right here. They literally bolted it into the concrete. If you remove that, that's going to probably crack, and it could go all the way to the pool, and you're going to have a leak. Anyway, so that went on and on. I will just tell you, the buyers did not buy that house. Daddy should have built that pergola somewhere else or something. I don't know what to tell you on that, but that did fall through. I don't know. If they do want kitchen appliances, or if they do want a washer and dryer, or the swing on a back porch, or whatever, make sure y'all put that in there. Other than that, that's all I really wanted to talk about. Make sure you witness the contract. The very last thing I want to go over on contracts is page 10 of 10. You really need to go back. But now if you're in dot loop and you try to go back in and do the acceptance date, it's going to erase signatures. So what you need to do is print out page 10, put that final acceptance date, and stick it back in, and make sure that the mortgage company gets it. Because guys, I'm here to tell you, the mortgage company, the lawyer, a lot of other people, they do not go by the date you have written on this contract. They literally look at the final acceptance date and take it 30, 45 days out, whatever they said that they could close it in. So make sure you do that. Estimated closing statement for the buyer. I talked about this and started doing this at this class last year, and a lot of you guys are doing it. Thank you, thank you. where I made the little box down here. It is so much easier if you disclose that the home inspection is going to be, $350 to $500, and that cost is paid upfront direct to the inspector. It's not paid to anybody but that inspector. So no seller is not going to pay for it. It is their home inspection. Because it's their home inspection, you cannot share that with the listing agent. You can the summary and you can the pictures, but unless you get it in writing from that buyer, it's not your inspection to give out. So you can't send a whole inspection to somebody unless you have it in writing. You can. And it says that on there, that they own that inspection. Buyer will also pay appraisal as soon as the repair addendum has been signed by all parties, and that fee will be credited. Because you're having a lot of buyers that, especially if they're USDA or VA, and they are not having to put any money down, you've got to educate them when you first start working with them. You've got to let them know they're going to need about $1,500 to $2,000, depending on the price and what kind of property it is. Because they've got to have earnest money. They got to have money for a home inspection. And then they've got to have the money for the appraisal. And I don't know how many of you have run into this, but not all appraisals are $500 anymore. We've run into several that are like $1,200 because they're unique properties. So you can't always assume that something's $500. I don't know. Hardly anything's what it used to be. I mean, and I think all y'all know that. But putting that box in there certainly helps that buyer to know, especially when you're sending it by dot loop so they can read it. The seller, a lot of you just put the sales price and then commission and maybe a wood infestation report. That's fine if that's all they're paying. However, if they're paying anything else, then you've got to put that amount in there. If they're paying closing costs, if there's an amount in repairs, make sure you're filling these out. One of the things the Real Estate Commission talks about is that people will put sales price, whether it's a buyer or seller, and they're not putting the down payment for a buyer. You need to know what kind of loan it is. If it's conventional and you just want to put 5% down, that's fine. But at least you provided them something, and they may be putting 10% down. If they ask for some other kind of home inspection, make sure that is put in there as well. And again, make sure all these are signed. Inspection and repairs addendum. Make sure that you fill that out. It is crucial that you get this filled out. And like, for instance, on here, you look at that home inspection and you can put like all electric items listed on page 6, 7, and 11. And then you can provide the pictures to go with this. That way they're seeing the pictures and they know what to repair. Because when you've got a repair guy going out there, they don't know our contract and they don't have the whole home inspection. So if they can at least have this page and that picture, they know what they're supposed to be doing and make sure it's done right. So make sure you get that in there along with those pictures. You're going to have some agents that'll say, we don't have that in our office. It doesn't matter what your office requires. This is in the contract that you're getting it signed on this form, not some other form. It says this form. So, just get it done. Same thing with as is. That's your next one in here. I didn't fill that out because you guys know how to do that. But item number 5 on your as is, if it says, if they don't want to initial that because there is a problem, then you're going to need to come down here in this little area in the bottom and put whatever needs to be fixed. Like I was saying, buyer and seller agree to escrow $1,000 to the closing attorney to get the following things done on the roof, and that's to be done by today at 5 o'clock or whatever, 2 weeks from now at 5 o'clock. But make sure you put a date and a time on there. And then everybody will sign it and you still have your as is so you can get paid. And it's okay if you use another company's as is, as long as it is a form that is as is. You don't think if they bring one that it's not okay for your people to sign. I'm good with that, as long as you have it. Seller information to closing attorney. It has mortgage company on there, but honestly, this is really for the closing attorney. Some of you use this, some of you don't. Closing attorneys will love you if you use these things. They will love you because it's got all the information that they need. It's got the seller's names. It's got the phone numbers. It's got their emails. It's got what their new address is going to be. Marital status, what the commission is. So now when somebody sends me an email and says, Gina, what's the commission on this? I'll say, please refer to my selling information to the closing attorney. And they'll go, oh yeah, sorry. And they'll go, oh my gosh. And now they're so used to that from me that they don't ask me that anymore. And there's some other people in here that I'm pretty sure they don't ask that either. And it's a great way for you to attach the bills. If you've got bills that need to be paid out of closing, attach it with that. Buyer info to closing attorney and mortgage company, just as important. Just as important. The reason I've got at that bottom, a utility bill is attached, that buyers to reimbursed. So if you've got certain foreclosures, the seller is not required to have the utilities on for your inspections to be done. And one of the things our contract says is that utilities will be on for not only a home inspection, but for the appraisal. So the buyer's having to go pay the fee, or either we're having to pay that fee, but we need to get reimbursed. So that is why that's on there, because I had somebody ask me that the other day. Lead-based paint. This addendum made part of a sales agreement dated. I know it says sales agreement, but that is also an exclusive right to sell agreement. So a sales agreement is actually something also that you are selling, not just buying. So you need to get this signed the day of your listing. And our board does not give you the opportunity to not get that done, because if it is lead-based paint, you've got to scan it in to the MLS and it becomes a part of it. And I'm going to go over some of those new fines here with you. But you'll put the property address, you'll put the seller, you put you as the listing agent. If it is unknown for lead-based paint, you'll mark A2. If it's not known, then you're going to need to mark B2. A lot of people are having their purchasers initial C. Please do not do that. It's saying that you received copies of some sort of report that you didn't. You need to mark D, that you have given them that pamphlet. One thing I've noticed that some of you do that I absolutely love is that you're scanning in the lead-based paint to your buyer and you're having them initial it. You're having them sign it or initial it where it says that they received that. Love that. Love that. That is some CYA, and that's awesome. But then you've got to mark if they want that 10-day opportunity or if they're waiving it. And then the agent's acknowledgement, that is the listing agent that needs to sign that right there. And then make sure you and the other agent and the other people sign it. If it's your seller, it needs to be the date of the listing. If it's your buyer, they're more lenient on that. Long as it, gets done, they're a little bit more lenient on it. I think I've got another sheet in there in y'all's that has about net sheets and new license law books. Again, it says that you have got to get. You don't? Okay. All right. Some of these things I didn't put in your thing because I was running so much paper that I'm just going to talk to y'all about it. It should be on the back of your lead-based paint. Yeah. Like I said in the beginning, some of your stuff is front and back. So, where do I find license law on net sheets? It tells you exactly where you find them. It talks about how you cannot rely on an estimate costs that are provided by a mortgage lender. That is why they do not allow it. And it is your responsibility to prepare one. And what they put, there is no cell phone app that gets around this. So I thought that was pretty good. The rule does not require you to prepare an estimated closing statement for the seller when you get the listing, which we've already covered. Brokers might require that, but I do not require that. But again, it has in here that you have got to have it for every transaction that you're doing. It doesn't matter if it's, right when they're making an offer and you're presenting it to the seller. You've got to have it for every single offer, counter offer, and then the final. If you have multiple offers, put in the wrong code. Oh, good grief. So when I'm looking through y'all's folders, I will go in there and make sure that that is done. Some people will be like, oh, I'm getting it. No, we got to have it immediately. So like I said, again, there's not going to be any of this, going back and forth and getting it later. I do not want the real estate commission to come in the office and sit down and me give them the code to my dot loop. Because if y'all don't have something signed, then again, that's going to be a problem. So we're going to watch this about failed transactions.
to pay special attention to this one. Alabama License Law Disciplinary Action, paragraph 34-27-36A 31 says that it is a violation of you, the qualifying broker or company, fail to keep in your files copies of all contracts, leases, listings, and other records pertinent to real estate transactions for a period of 3 years. Now we know that you qualifying brokers are aware that you must retain such documents as listings, leases, sales contracts, and the recap disclosure forms for 3 years. But the words that we need to examine here are other records pertinent to real estate transactions. Do you realize that included in the definition of other records pertinent are failed offers to purchase real estate? That's what I said. Offers that never became completed sales contracts. Offers that never ripened into a sale. This would be a good time to check your records and make sure you are keeping failed offers. But there is a good reason why the law includes failed offers under the heading of other records pertinent. Let's say that a listing agent worked his or her own offer at the expense of all others, or that the unsuccessful offer was, in fact, never even presented to the sellers. Then let's suppose that the potential buyer decides to bring an action against the seller, the listing agent, and the listing agent's qualifying broker. Then all pertinent records would include failed offers. If these records are subpoenaed but not retained, then we have a problem. So the message is clear. Qualifying brokers and companies must include all unsuccessful offers in their 3 years of retained paperwork. Failed offers would be considered other records pertinent. If you've not been doing this, start today.
So, if you've got other things that are going on, and all because it did not go through, that does not mean that we don't have to have a record of that. You just heard it. That is a law, and we have to have that for a minimum of 3 years. So it doesn't matter how many offers you got on a property, or it doesn't matter if it failed. We have got to still have that. And guess what else we still have to have? That estimated closing statement. A lot of you will say, well, that it fell through. It doesn't matter. We still have to have what is required by law on all of that. We're going to talk about multiple offers. If I were y'all, we had multiple offers that were coming in, and it was crazy there for a time. We're not getting as many as we were, but they're still happening, and you're getting multiple offers. Label them offer number 1, 2, 3, 4. On your estimated closing statement, you will put all the pertinent information that you need to. You will put the breakdown of offer 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll have 4 different estimated closing statements. In a box down there at the bottom, you can put what kind of loan it is, what contingencies there are, what they're wanting to remain. Put whatever is pertinent on that. And then, but don't put a last name under buyer, and label them offer number 1, offer number 2, 3, and 4. And you send that to your seller. Why am I asking you to do that? Because if the seller knows a buyer, that is not fair to other people that are writing an offer. If the seller or the listing agent is rather fond of the selling agent, that doesn't need to come into play. None of that needs to come into play. You are here to do a job and abide by the code of ethics and abide by law for your seller or your buyers. And think about it if the shoe is on the other foot. If you're working with a buyer and you know there's multiple offers, wouldn't you want that agent to do that for you as well, instead of sending them a bunch of things and then trying to weigh on one more than another? Because guys, it happens. It happens. You'll look in the MLS and know that you wrote an offer for $304,000, and then you'll see that it sold for $295,000. And guess what? Your people were cash, and they got a mortgage. Something's wrong there. Something's wrong there. Some agent did not do as they needed to do. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen to you, but let's not be the ones that do that. We want to be known as an office that always has, abides by the law, abides by the code of ethics, and is a very fair office. To me, that is a lot more important. You got agents coming and going, and you got some offices that are recruiting 100 at a time, it seems like. I'd rather have an office, and I hope y'all would too, that is about abiding by everything we're supposed to and about the quality of agents that we have, not quantity. I really think that it makes a difference. And that's why, to me, this class and other things that we do in sales meetings are so important. But let's say you do get multiple offers. Take a backup. Have y'all noticed on your emails how many things are going back on the market and they'll say, no fault to seller? There's 2 reasons really why that happens, or 3, I guess. 1, not a satisfactory home inspection, and they freaked out. Even though it wasn't big, they freaked out. 2, their financing fell through. Or 3, they got cold feet. Especially first-time home buyers, they just got cold feet. This is kind of where, your earnest money comes into play that's so important as well. And it kind of helps that it's coming back to our office because they have to sign that mutual release, which they really have to sign anyway. But take backup offers. For example, Tatnall that I have listed right here in Jamestown, that first offer, it was a 91-year-old military man that he was going to get the home inspection, and he all of a sudden said, well, you know what? We already know that roof's 20 years old, and I'm a little nervous about it. And I'm 91, I wanted to put on the roof. So we're going to back out. Thank heavens, because we had 4 offers on that we said, hey, we're going to keep yours as a backup, and then we had a backup to the backup. Okay? So once that happened, I immediately called agent number 2 and agent number 3. And I said, 1 is backed out, you're into play. But the seller and I had given our word to offer number 2 that they were the next ones in line, that they were the backup of that. So it's important that you keep your word on something like that. 3 could have easily said, well, we'd like for everybody to have to compete on these offers again. No, we said originally, this is offer 1, 2, and 3. 4 was out of play. Didn't matter about 4. So you gotta, if that's what you're telling people, especially when you're texting it and you're emailing it and you put it in writing, you gotta keep your word on that. Even if 3 would have wanted to make a higher offer, we had to play out number 2. So there's nothing wrong with you telling your buyer, hey, you want to keep this as a backup? Because it might fall through. Now, if they find another house in the meantime, that's fine. You can remove that backup offer. But get them to sign something stating that this is a backup offer so that they aren't taking other offers and they don't forget about you. Draft up something that says that your buyer is number 2, and if something happens with financing or the home inspection, that they will come to play. I think that's a big deal too. Any offers that come in, speaking of that, so let's say 2 more offers would have come in after that. By law, you have to present all offers all the way up to the day of closing. Now, that doesn't mean they get out of the one that they're working. They've already signed it. They're already under contract. But again, that can be a backup. It can be a backup, but you do have to legally present all offers. All right, I'm going to go over a little bit about our board and the fact that they have a lot of fines now. Change of status listing, you have to get that done, and it has to be filed in our office within 24 hours. So if there's a price change, and none of this is in your notebook, by the way, this is just stuff I'm going over. If there's a status change, a price change, like I said, get it emailed or sent to you immediately so we can do that. Withdrawals of listings prior to expiration date, you cannot withdraw a listing. We've had a major problem with that in the past. You as an agent cannot withdraw a listing, period. Only the broker can. And there has been such a problem, and there has been an actual grievance that was filed, and there were several grievances filed that, there was 2 different situations. One, an agent just was, when something would go on, they'd withdraw their own listing. The second one, which here's where I think it really came from. This is not just Oatham, this is Enterprise too. The agent was leaving that office and going to another office, and they went in and withdrew their listings. You don't own the listing. The broker, who is called the participant in our MLS, owns all the listings. You are not allowed to do that. So they finally put it in here stating that you cannot do that. That withdrawing a listing is between the seller and the broker, and they now have to sign something. Used to, y'all could call me and say, hey, my seller needs to take it off the market because they're having surgery or something like that, and we'd take it off the market. Now, if they're going to take it off the market and put it back on, it has to be 30 days. They have to leave it off the market for 30 days. But if they want to just take it off the market and leave it off, or they want to take it off and put it with somebody else or something of that nature, I'm the only one that can do that. And it has to be in writing. It's never had to be in writing before. So we've got to email each other back and forth. I've got to send them something stating that I'm releasing them from the listing. So I'm having to get used to that because that's new for me as well. Again, expiration of listings, when that comes out of the computer and we don't have anything in writing and y'all call Cindy and say, I needed you to extend that. Well, she couldn't because you didn't send her anything in writing. So don't get mad at Cindy because she's just doing what we're telling her to do. And I will tell y'all, she knows these MLS rules better than a lot of us because she gets these as well. So, and she tries to help us with that. Also in your MLS, it talks about disclosing of existing offers. If y'all have noticed on your new listing agreement, it actually says in there if the seller allows the disclosure of multiple offers. Now, I wouldn't know. Now, anybody that doesn't mark that, I don't understand. Because to me, I would always mark that. And I want everybody to know so I can sell my house for above list price. Refusal to sell. That is in here now. So this is something that you're going to need to probably tell your people. It's on, if y'all, in Navica, you can go under forms and you can go, it's not under forms, but it's under the other little page, but it's all right there together. It actually on page 11 under our MLS rules says refusal to sell. If the seller of any listed property filed with the MLS refused to accept a written offer satisfying the terms and conditions stated in the listing, such facts shall be transmitted immediately to MLS and all participants. Okay, I don't know if y'all know what that means. I just told y'all participant means brokers. So if you got a seller that will not accept, let's say buyers paying their own closing costs, or they went over list price for it to be covered, and they gave them full list price, and then all of a sudden they refused to sell, that right there, you might want to give them a copy of. Because that means that we got to disclose it to the association office and every broker in our MLS. Because participants are broker. So we've got to disclose that to them. Now that's a new one. Failure to enter a listing in the MLS. If you do not do that, you get $50 fine. If you misuse your email address, it's a $100 fine. If you do not have in there, which all of y'all do, because we make sure, so you'll get emails from people and it'll just say, Neil Simmons and not where he works. Or let's say it said Neil Simmons, clear to close, and didn't have C21 James Grant Realty. That's a violation of Alabama law. So that's what they're talking about, misuse of email. Failure to enter pending and sales into the MLS. That's on page 20, item number D. You have to do that within 24 hours or you get a $200 fine. I had a broker call me the other day furious because they had sent a $500 fine. It was for the following reasons. One, there was a sign on the property, but it was not an MLS. Two, when it went pending, they didn't report it. And then when it sold, they took 48 hours instead of 24. Some of you have already gotten fines. So they're serious about this. So make sure you get that in there. And we no longer will do that for y'all. If something's going pending or has sold, whether it be in Dothan or Wiregrass, you've got to report it. Speaking of that, if you are in both MLSs, then we need to talk about which one you're going to withdraw it from. You cannot report it and sold in both MLSs because that's not true. The house didn't sell twice and it throws all statistics off. So you cannot report it in both. So if it's a house in Enterprise and you're in the Wiregrass, report it in the Wiregrass one or Daleville. But if it's outside of Wiregrass or Daleville, let's talk about it and see where we want to report that. Failure to place picture in main frame of listing. You've got to make sure you have a picture in there. Even if it's land, just put a copy of the survey. If it's brand new construction, put the front of the house in there. You get that from the builder or architect or whoever did it. Branding of property in the MLS. if it's already got your sign up and you're taking a new picture of the front because they painted it or put a new roof on it, your sign cannot be in it. That's branding. So we cannot do that. Lead-based paint, if you do not get that put in the listing within 24 hours, that's another $100. Make sure you're putting in the right area in the MLS. They've got that in the Navica as well. That's a $100 fine, and if it's not corrected within 24 hours. So they've gotten pretty stern about all this. Again, this is a license renewal year. So when you get ready to pay your license renewal, be careful with that. If you send them a check, to me, it's just scary. I don't care if you got $100,000 in your checking account. You never know what can happen. And there are people that, have written checks to them and then forgot that they closed one account and opened a business account, and then they had to go before the real estate commission. So just be very, very careful with doing that. And then again, you've got to have 15 hours, 3 hours of 3 hours of risk management, 3 hours of fair housing, and then whatever you want to take on the rest will be fine with me. Mutual releases. Mutual release. A lot of the other companies don't have where it's signed by the broker. If you get one of those forms and it doesn't have somewhere for the broker to sign it and it just has somewhere for you to sign it, then mark that out, send it to me, and let me sign it, because that earnest money is supposed to be on the brokers, not the agents, and they're the ones that are supposed to release it. But they also have to be signed by everybody. The brokers are not supposed to sign it just because the listing people did. It needs to be signed by the buyer and the sellers before the brokers sign it. So I just wanted to go over that again because that's been kind of a problem. Let's see, we're going to do advertising. Let's see, where's the advertising? Advertising and social media.
Let's talk about advertising and social media. Outbound advertising is simple. Your company's name must appear on every post, and your advertisements can be false, misleading, or fraudulent. We understand that technology is constantly changing, and that social media is now a preferred way to advertise. It's also the focus of most complaints against licensees. Alabama License Law Sections 34-27-36A15 and 34-27-36A6 address advertising requirements. What is considered advertising? Any post, photo, or comments on any social media platform that's promoting you as a licensee is considered advertising. This includes any photos of your clients holding a sold sign, any photos of your clients at a closing, or even your new realtor license plate. Other than personal websites, the most common and digital integrator used in advertising for license activities. For social media, the law is the same as all other forms of advertising. Your company's name or your broker's name must appear prominently. This means on every picture or post. Please remember that this law is applicable to all social media platforms. Facebook is a platform that we get the most questions about. So let's discuss how to keep it legal on Facebook. If your company name is included in your Facebook name, for example, Just Bart, then you comply. However, if your Facebook name is only Just Bart, then every single post or picture can use the company name in the description or in the post. On any videos, for example, a virtual tour of a home, you can simply place your company's name at the beginning or the end. Once it's finished, consider your company name. For branch offices, use the company name with the branch identifier, such as ABC Realty East Branch, or the company name without the East Branch identifier. A salesperson at a branch can either put ABC Realty on the sign or ABC Realty East Branch. So what about franchise names? If you just put RE/MAX on your advertising and your company name is RE/MAX ABC Realty, then obviously using just the franchise name does not help. We know which company is being identified. In this case, use the ABC Realty with your franchise name. The Alabama Real Estate Commission Commission understands how important advertising is to our licensees. The Alabama license law provides great freedom when it comes to advertising. So just follow the few rules that we do have, and if you ever have any questions or concerns, feel free to contact the legal division so they can review any advertisements to make sure that you are in compliance.
So in the past, they have not been quite as strict as they are now. Those of you that were at the last Realtor Luncheon, and the lady from the legal department of the Real Estate Commission was there. She's also, I think, going to Enterprise as well. If you've not heard her, one of the things that she said is that when she was driving into town, she saw several signs or billboards that did not comply. They are going to be, right now, it just says that the company name has to be on there. So used to, when we got into real estate, the company name had to be larger than your name. Now it just has to be on there. She said some of them are so small that you still can't see who the company is. Okay. They can't see it. So they're going to make it now where I think she said it's going to have to be just as big as your name. So that way everybody doesn't question where you work or who you're from. Those of you that are teams, or some of you that are not teams, that actually call yourself something else. For instance, I called one of you the other day and was listening to your voicemail, and it says Rose Grant Realty or Rose Grant Real Estate or whatever. It doesn't say anything about Century 21. You got to change your voicemail. Got to change voicemail. It has to say, and if you're in multiple states, then it's okay if you say, Rose Grant with Century 21, James Grant Realty, and Rose Grant with ABC Realty and Florida. You can say Alabama and Florida. It's okay if you leave both on there because you're doing business in both states. But if you've got something on your voicemail that says like clear to close team, it's got to say clear to close team with Century 21, James Grant Realty, or, Gina Grant Real Estate with Century 21, James Grant Realty. Make sure you do that because they're reporting each other. I don't know who's riding around that is our MLS police, and it must be more than one person because they are turning people into Margaret left and right. They're not only doing that, they're turning you into the Real Estate Commission for your advertising. So what I didn't necessarily like is that she said that as brokers, we need to, now make sure you understand what I'm saying this, not on your personal page, but on your business page. Monitor what you're doing on your business page. But if you don't have a separate business page from your personal page and you're advertising, let's say you just say, I'm going out and showing houses. I sure do love real estate. Still, got to put Century 21 James Grant Realty. And y'all, I see that all the time on Facebook. I do. We all do. Have a closing today. I'm so excited for my buyers and sellers. Still got to put Century 21 James Grant Realty. So it might be easier to have a business page and do not put that on your personal page. But then you're like, but that's where I want it to come from. Put it on your business page first, because I asked her about this. Put it on your business page first, and then share it with your personal page, and then you're covered. But and if nothing else, just when you've done it on your business page and you want to put it on your personal page, go in there and type on the beginning, Century 21, James Grant Realty, and then put whatever you're wanting to put. And you cannot put C21 because under the Real Estate Commission, our name is Century 21, James Grant Realty. So you can't put James Grant Realty. You've got to put Century 21, James Grant Realty. The only time we can separate those two is when it comes to our property management department because they are two totally separate entities. So that doesn't go under Century 21. So if somebody says it's got a James Grant Realty sign in the front yard, send it to the rental department because if it doesn't have a Century 21 sign, that means it's in our rental department. So be aware of what you're doing on social media. The other thing she said that scares me, and several of you were there, is that, this is not just for advertising, this is for a lot of things. They don't just bring the agent. They take the broker with them. They require the broker to come as well. So those, some of the, y'all wonder why I have y'all sign in at sales meetings, because we don't have sales meeting every Tuesday anymore. We just have it basically every other week. There are a couple of times that'll have 5 weeks in the month, and we might have one that's back to back, but it says on there what we talked about. I try to, email it to you guys for, your benefit. That cannot be there, and I email the newsletter and email some other information. But that's one of the reasons I mark it on there for people that don't always come to sales meeting and miss out on some things and don't call me later or sit down and say, hey, what was sales meeting about? That way I can say, hey, I had a sales meeting on that. They weren't there. I had a mandatory meeting, which is why those that are not there, they've got to turn that back into me, because you have to sign something that states that you did this meeting. So all those things are something that we have to do and required by law. One thing I want to talk a little bit about on this buyer's agency that I was saying that I told y'all to put aside, under number 4, under compensation, that may start to change. I don't know how many of you have heard about the lawsuit that's going on that NAR is doing, and some people have settled. Some people are still going to court. The next one to go to court, I believe, is I was saying it today? Yeah, or tomorrow. Yeah.
It ain't good.
Or tomorrow.
Sometimes it's called the cartel.
Yeah. So Anywhere settled, which Anywhere on C21, Caldwell Banker, Better Homes and Gardens, ERA, Sotheby's, and a couple of others that I can't remember the names of. But they settled and some other people settled. We don't know what that's going to mean, that some people settled and some people didn't. Your Berkshire Hathaways, your Remaxes, all them are about to go to court. Your Keller Williams. Oh, Remax settled. Okay. It's Keller Williams, isn't it? Keller Williams and Remax are the two that are still going to court. This is taking place in Minnesota. What they're saying is that it's, why would the sellers have to pay the buyer's agent? Why are they having to pay their part of the commission? The buyers should be paying a buyer's agent commission. And why should a seller do that? This could change the game of real estate. It could completely change the way you're doing things. And that's why this form could possibly be different. Those of you that are at least putting 1% in there now, I think that's a great idea. But depending on what happens with NAR and what goes down the pipeline, you may no longer get paid by the seller. Y'all really need to be watching this. And I don't know how many of you are on TikTok. Some people think TikTok's silly, but there are a lot of things that you can do on TikTok that are business related. 3/4 of what I follow on TikTok is actually business related, and there's a bunch of it on there right now. And it's talking about that, and it's on Facebook too, but they're also talking about commercial real estate and how commercial real estate's about to change. One good piece of information, I get something called Inman that I pay for and pay for the Inman is y'all ought to get it. I mean, it's like $99 for a whole year, and you get emailed all the time, and you can see all these articles, and it really, it's impressive of what all they do. They even have a convention once a year, but they're talking about this lawsuit going on. They also came out this morning and said that, the head guy for housing has said that raising these interest rates all the time is really not doing the economy any good. Well, praise Jesus. I'm so glad you finally came out and said that. Now that we're about to hit 8%. Thank you very much. But better late than never. Because we just heard last week when we were at that conference, they were talking about how it could go, be at 8.25% interest by the end of this year. Well, I'm hoping that's not going to be the case now that that's been said. Hopefully that won't happen. However, you never know what's going to happen next year. You got a presidential race. And the Democrats may decide, whether you're Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter to me, but the Democrats may decide that they want to lower it a little bit. That'd be great. That would be great. There are still loans out there. You guys have really got to start marketing yourselves to get buyers and sellers. Sellers are a little scared to sell right now, especially if they have a low interest rate. They're a little worried about finding something and then having to get this high interest rate. I understand that. I get that. But, if you're in a situation where somebody needs to buy, you just need to tell them, love the home, rent the rate. I love that saying. I think that's great. But there's also assumable loans. We've done 2 in the office already this year that worked out. You need to ask your seller if they have an assumable loan. It's a way of you being able to do business. And you still got a lot of cash people out there. So, when it comes to real estate and people getting nervous about it and they're saying that they feel like a lot of people are going to get out of being in real estate, I'm okay if they weed out some of these folks as far as realtors. I'm not going to lie. And I'm being filmed. Yes, I said it. I'm okay with some of these folks. But I believe that, was it 42%, Wes, that they said are 4 years or less? Yes, less than 4 years, 42% in our state.
That was over 50% a year ago.
Yeah. But that's still a lot. That's still a lot. But those of you that are new, don't let that deter you. All you got to do, listen, in my opinion, y'all are hitting the market at the best time you could, because you're going to have to learn how to market yourself and how to get business. Whereas all these other people that got in it 4 years ago, it was falling in their laps. Absolutely falling in their laps. And now they are clueless as to what to do. So get you a plan. When you start setting your goals in December and January for next year, I like to meet with you because you're all individual people and do different things. You don't have to be involved in every board and organization in Dothan, like some people. That doesn't mean you have to do that. You've just got to be smart with your marketing. You don't have to spend tons of money. You need to do your Century 21. You need to do your 21 online. I cannot tell you. I went on there again Friday and got a lead yesterday. And then I send it to, different people in the office, when I get them. But if you're not using that and going on there once or twice a week, you need to be getting on Moxie Works and doing things, just something, anything. And we are working with Margaret to get that hooked up to at least the Dothan MLS. She's now working with them on doing that. When that happens, that's going to be even better, because I know, like Chris and some other folks, when they're trying to get people in there, it stops at a certain point because we're not hooked up to the MLS. I do get that and I understand that. I don't know why this is such a slow process. We are still working on our new website. They have already started doing some things on it. They've already started doing our social media. Some of you at sales meeting the other day already heard this, but when they started our social media, in just a few days, we had over 7,000 hits. That's great for y'all. So after that sales meeting, I got a call from one of our agents that says, oh my gosh, I don't know what we've changed, but I just got a call from a guy that says he's called 2 other realtors and 2 other offices and then called me. But they looked up and were able to Google her, look up some things on our site and see what all that realtor's accomplished. When it comes to you working for your commission and what you're going to have to do to get your sellers to pay a higher commission than some of these folks that are paying 2%, that's exactly it. You're going to get business off a website. You're going to get business off your social media. You're going to get business off of marketing. But you've got to be able to prove that you're worth your money. You got to be able, and there's different ways that we're going to show you that you can do that. I'm not going to do that today. I have it on here, but I'm going to save that for another meeting. But that came from NAR, 5 different ways. If y'all can look it up, that you can say that you've earned your commission. One of them was an example of this guy took a dollar bill, but it was a play dollar bill, not a real one. But he got like some Monopoly money. And they said, well, that's fine, but the agent that came before you said they'd do it for 2%, and you're asking me to do it for 3%. And that agent got that fake dollar bill and halved it and said, okay, well, that's what you're getting for their services. Do you want half the service, or do you want somebody that can prove to you that they're qualified and going to get you what you need for your home and stay in touch with you the whole time? That had to be impactful. I mean, I don't think a lot of y'all would have the nerve to do that, but you could do it in other ways. There was a time where a doctor wanted an agent to take less commission on a listing, and they had their marketing plan sitting right there. And they grabbed that marketing plan and started marking a couple of things out. And the seller said, what are you doing? And she said, well, I mean, you want me to cut my rate, so I'm not doing some of this stuff. I'm not going to do a Sunday open house and a realtor open house. I'm not doing both. And then I'm not going to do this right here either because you need me to cut that. They said, that'd be like me coming to the doctor's office and tell you I don't want to do the copay. And they said, well, you can't get around a copay. That's a federal thing, whatever it is. I'm not even sure what that is in the medical field. But anyway, you can't get around the copay. And they said, but still, that'd be like me trying to see you on the side. How about me just come to your house so I don't have to pay that copay? And that doctor finally said, I get your point. Now, we'll do it at that commission. I want you to initial everything you marked out that you're going to still do, though. But it worked. But it's things like that you've got to come up with a plan that you're going to do. But we're going to start setting those goals in December and January. If you need my help with them, that's what I'm here to do. I'm happy to help you. Again, let me go over one more time. When you are turning in an earnest money deposit, or if you're not, from this point forward, once it is under contract, you will need to turn in all of the required by law paperwork, broker's disclosure, agency, contract, and all the estimated closing statements. So we can put it in that escrow drawer. I do not want them having to go and sit down at my darn dot loop. It'll just be easier on all of us. But if it is an earnest money, attach it to it and put it on my desk so there's no questions. So at this time, does anybody have any questions about what we've gone over? And make sure y'all look up this lawsuit because it's interesting. And it's scary. Like Wes said, it's scary. And I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want y'all to all start freaking out on me. Chris?
One thing you said, I just want to verify, the TV mount, I get that needs to stay. I totally agree. With that.
Yeah.
The TV has to stay.
No,
also?
the TV can go long as, it can go.
I want to make sure I kind of want to.
Yeah. We left the TV the other day just because nobody had the tools to get it off. And we figured the buyers could do it. And the seller lives in Key West. So, but yeah.
I know it's written in there, so that's probably a good thing to write in additional comments because honestly, no one reads that part. And there's so many times we've walked into houses and TV mounts, you got 4 lag boat holes in the wall. So
Exactly.
okay.
And your bags, Tora and Wes brought those back from the conference for all of you guys. So I thought that was sweet.